Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to a segment where we are going to be looking back on the performance of the European Championships of England's number one and Everton's number one, Jordan Pickford. He was desperately unlucky, many believe, to miss out on playing at the tournament, and I'm definitely in that camp. But yeah, like I say, I'm joined by Neil Tyler and James Pendleton from the Babbling Blues. We'll get straight into it. We'll start with you, Neil. What would your take on Pickford's performances at this tournament? I think he exceeded everyone's expectations, certainly large sections of the mainstream media.
Absolutely. I mean, I will put my hand on my heart and say I was one of those who might have been a bit more vocal than I probably should have been with some of his form, maybe last year, but he's maybe eat me words since Christmas, maybe just before Christmas. Probably the derby, to be honest. Since the derby, you could easily argue he's been the best goalkeeper in the country, to be honest.
Yeah,
he's been generally superb, to be honest. Since he's opened up and said he's been speaking to people about his form and issues and stuff, and I just think that's just relaxed him so much more. And I just think it's been obvious, especially through this tournament. As you say, he should have been goalkeeper of the tournament, if not player of the tournament, to be honest.
Certainly goalkeeper of the tournament, we could all argue, I think. James, what was your opinion on, obviously Donnarumma got the player of the tournament, but, I looked at some of the metrics on this, and Pickford seemed to exceed Donnarumma in many areas. I think that's a bit harsh on him to miss out on the team of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I couldn't believe it when I seen him going up and getting the award. I thought it was mental. I think Donnarumma's been very good as well. I watched quite a few of Italy's games. I thought he's had a really solid tournament, absolutely. But I think if you're a goalkeeper, if you keep the most clean sheets, you concede the least amount of goals, and get all the way to the final in doing so as well, I don't really see how you can be behind anyone else unless someone has a barnstormer every single game. And I think Donnarumma was good, as I say, but I think Pickford made vital saves in pretty much every game that England played at the Euros. And I think he absolutely deserved to be goalkeeper of the tournament at the very least, if not even player of the tournament. I think he should definitely have been up there in the top sort of 3 or 5 names you maybe look at. But yeah, I thought he was really, really good, had a really solid tournament, and right up until literally the last thing he had to do, which was obviously save the last penalty, and obviously it wasn't enough for England, but I thought he was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not about player of the tournament, but certainly the best goalkeeper. He should have had the goal. Like, obviously, he did win the Golden Glove. He got the, joint. I think it was the least amount of goals conceded. Actually, he conceded one less than Donnarumma, and also broke Gordon Banks' record in the protest. There's a lot of things worthy of recognition there. Why do you think Jordan Pickford's missed out on the goalkeeper of the tournament?
I don't even know. Because as you pointed on, a lot of the metrics that it was judged on, I think somebody posted up on Twitter pointing out that the vast majority was well ahead of Donnarumma, if not slightly ahead on a lot of things. But I don't know whether whoever votes for it takes into consideration some of the media of the country. Because, to be honest, I might be going slightly off topic here, but there's very few people who have praised him for what he's done. It just seems a bit odd that is all the good that he has been doing. It's been doing it on a regular basis, and yet the thing that got focused on the most was the defenders and leaving out the goalkeeper. So I don't know whether that sort of sways voting. I don't know who votes for it, or whether it's a list of contemporaries or you wait for themselves, but it just seemed a bit odd when you consider the things that he has done so far this tournament.
I think there's a bit of club bias as well. Obviously, the fact that Pickford plays for Everton, and maybe because Donnarumma's just signed for Paris Saint-Germain.
It wouldn't surprise me, would it?
As far as UEFA are concerned, definitely. I can definitely see there being a bit of club bias there.
I think it just came down to who won, to be honest with you. I don't know when it's decided. I didn't hear anything before kickoff. Literally, the only thing I seen was when he went up to get the award. So I don't know if it's already predetermined, but it wouldn't surprise me if England had won, whether Harry Kane would have got it, Luke Shaw, Jordan Pickford, I'm not sure. But I think if whoever won it could well have had a big sort of impact on who got given it, and obviously the fact that he's just signed for Paris Saint-Germain potentially also playing a part. I just think maybe Italy had I know we spoke about how they were really stable for the whole tournament. I think England were probably even better defensively. Maybe that's potentially another reason that he probably felt like he had slightly less to do. I'm not too sure, but yeah, for me, I think he definitely would have been or should have been ahead of Donnarumma.
For me, I think we'll just touch on what Neil's just said about the influence that if that is the case, there might have been influence from the national media. I can imagine the Italian media has been generally very supportive of Gigi Donnarumma in his career. I feel like the media, like you say, we haven't seen enough praise for Pickford's performances at this Euros. But equally, I feel like whenever something did go wrong, I feel like the media were queuing up to give him pelters. But I think, is that just... I mean, one, again, is that a sort of bias thing because it's who he plays for at club level, but also is it just, I think, a symptom of the national media and the cynical nature of it?
I think so. I think the goalkeeper is the worst position to be in if you're going to make mistakes, isn't it? Because you are the last line of defence. So if a defender makes a mistake, you sort of say, oh, well, such and such was covering and things like that. But like you say, when he got pelters, the defence was getting praised here, there and everywhere for the games up until the semi-final against Denmark. And then obviously lets the free kick in. And yet everybody dives on it. Oh, he should have saved this. He should have saved that. Not going over the fact, I think I can't remember who it was on Twitter, posted up what had gone on with the free kick and how they'd blocked his view because there was the gap in the wall and things like that. Nobody mentions that.
It was a really cleverly and well executed free kick.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not something that was straightforward. It wasn't like he'd completely stood still and he hadn't seen it. It's just the way that he had his view. And yet, for some reason, they jumped all over him just for that. I wouldn't even class it as a mistake. He could have saved it, but it wasn't deserving of the being pilloried the way he was in the papers the day after or on social media and things like that by some of the so-called journalists who are supposed to give unbiased views. It was a bit the other way, to be honest, for some of the stuff I'd seen.
I think there's been a very much orchestrated witch hunt against Jordan Pickford, and that's what we're going to go on to now, of course. I think a lot of that stemmed from the injury to Van Dijk last year. It's been nearly a year now, actually. It's been like 9 months since that actually happened. But Jordan Pickford was scrutinised incredibly harshly since that incident. I think there was a real witch hunt. We spoke about like how Pickford had to hire bodyguards to protect his family and stuff for the hounding he was getting off. And I must admit, I don't think it was necessarily Liverpool fans. I think it was the Liverpool biased press that were orchestrating this hounding of him.
I think he was under scrutiny before that as well. Because just think once you're sort of nailed on to being the number one goalie, you're going to get stick no matter what. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a position in world football where you get more stick if you are England's goalie. Maybe I think that because I'm obviously English and I've seen what's happened to goalkeepers and other starting players in the past.
James, David Seaman, Robert Green.
Yeah, Paul Robinson and that own goal Gary Neville scored all those years ago, stuff like that. Just Scott Carson being another one against Croatia. It's like, I can't think of a worse position to be in football, and I can't think of a single sort of gaff he's made for England. I remember Joe Hart. I saw the highlights against Iceland.
Joe Hart was ridiculously poor for England.
I watched the highlights against Iceland the other day, and that second goal, no one talks about how it's one of the worst goals you've ever seen. Joe Hart just letting it squirm through, and I don't know. I feel like he got away with that. Maybe because he played Man City.
We all talk about he obviously made a mistake as well for that amazing overhead kick for Ibrahimovic and all that. There was like a lot of now I think about it, he did make a fair few errors in the England shirt, but I don't ever remember him getting as much bad press as Jordan Pickford's had. And I feel like that is because he injured a Liverpool player. That's definitely,
I think it wasn't just that he injured, I think it was just the way that that they didn't get sent off. I think it was another big thing, perfect storm of just everything that went wrong for
anger. Obviously, like we say, there's a lot of Liverpool bias in the media, and I think that sort of, like you say, because he wasn't sent off, there was a lot of anger and resentment in the media, and I think that sort of spilled out into every column that was written about Jordan Pickford, whether it be for Everton, for England.
It was kind of like the villagers and the pitchforks at one point afterwards, wasn't it? I mean, it was he was getting, as you say, he'd had to hire bodyguard. He was getting abuse because his girlfriend was pregnant at the time as well, I think, wasn't she? She had no and then they were getting abuse from all quarters and stuff. And then it's just that viewpoint, for some reason, still hasn't changed, because people, I think at the start of the tournament, after the first few games, after the group games, people were saying, "Oh, he's a different player when he's playing for England than he is from Everton."
He wasn't.
And that kind of, well, that's the thing, because people, it's as if they were dismissing Everton out of the factor where, up until the tournament, that's where he was playing his trade. He's been brilliant since Christmas, and because he was playing for England now, it was easy to dismiss the Everton factor of it. And I think that's kind of, because he's playing for England, that's kind of, it gets United for him, because obviously it's all compasses in. And like you say, the Liverpool bias dismissed the Everton, because wasn't he described as ex-Sunderland keeper when he had a good game rather than the Everton keeper?
He was indeed.
So I mean, that's clear as day where you see the sort of bias from it, and that's kind of the issue we're seeing.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen that, but I think what I was really going to touch on when I was saying, obviously, he got hounded by the press and hounded like his family, and he had to hire bodyguards. What resilience he's had to bounce back the way he did, like you say, post-Christmas, he's been a revelation.
Absolutely.
Like, brilliant. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just think, like, so I remember at the time thinking, I just wouldn't have been able to handle it. Like, I know by the time you're professional football, I think the idea is you kind of made a steal and you can take a lot of criticism, and I'm sure he absolutely could have done before it. But I remember just thinking at the time, if I was him, I would have just wanted the ground to swallow me up. It must have just been horrendous. And I remember looking on like his Instagram, I think he'd normally get 1,200, 1,500 comments. And I think his most recent post at the time had like 27,000 comments. Like, I know it's obviously not the same kind of abuse, but you look at the England players who missed penalties the other day, if you look on their Instagram, the comments are like through the roof. It's ridiculous how many there is on there. And it was the same for that. He had a social media blackout. I don't think he posted anything for months on end. It must have been such a hard time for him. You touch on the bodyguards, obviously, and what was going on with his wife as well, who's on Instagram. I was on her account the other day as well. It must have been such a difficult time for him. And then he had to come back and keep on playing. I know Robin Olsen obviously got a period of time in net as well. So after that, I think maybe it might have been the game after or 2 games after, I can't quite remember. But I think that was a big thing that also helped Jordan Pickford, the fact he was taken out the limelight and was sort of allowed to maybe just sort of calm down a little bit the few weeks after that. But yeah, since Christmas, I can't think of many things he's done wrong for both Everton and probably maybe more importantly for England in terms of the media scrutiny against him.
Definitely, but with regards to like what we said there, like a lot of pundits have kind of like they dismissed that he did play very well for Everton for the final like 3 or 4 months of the season. You can ignore a good like final month maybe, but have they missed all this, or are they just choosing to miss it?
I just think we like to pick and choose what they can use in their own articles. It's like it's easy to dismiss the good stuff if you're writing a hit piece. Do you know what I mean? Oh well, they focus on the mistake that in the derby when he tried to tip it over and Origi popped in, and they like the Van Dijk incident that you always pop up again. You would think that's all he's ever done. When you see some media written about him, all he's ever done is injure Van Dijk. But the games that obviously we've seen, now we might be slightly biased, but on the other hand of that, a lot of fans were questioning him, and which is fair. It's all fair and good as long as it doesn't spill into abuse and stuff, criticising and wonder where he can do better and stuff. But a lot of us hold our hands up, admit we got it wrong, and then praise him where credit's due.
Absolutely.
Whereas a lot of the press still have that idea about him. Like you say, it does seem to be a lot of the Liverpool press or the Liverpool fans in the media still have this image of him as he's the guy who injured Van Dijk. He's the guy who ruined their chances of winning the league or retaining the league or winning the league or whatever it was. And I think a lot of people are struggling to get rid of that view of him. Whereas if they would just take a step back, watch what he's done since he's been from the last 4 or 5 months of the season, watch what he's done in the European Championships, they would literally have a completely different view of him. But sadly, as you say, there does seem to be that constant bias against the clubs who aren't playing for the so-called elite.
Just bias against ex-Sunderland keepers.
Yeah.
At least in fairness, the ex-Sunderland midfielder Henderson scored his first England goal during the tournament.
Well, he wasn't going on, was he?
I'm surprised he didn't take that penalty off Saka as well, right at the end of the shootout. Oh, I'd say no, he wasn't even on the pitch anymore, was he? So, yeah, nightmare.
Thing is, I think the thing is we should have been seeing more of the experienced players taking those pens. I think because you're hanging out to dry a young lad like teenager, but what you've got to admit though is like you've seen some of the pictures on social media the last day or so, like the solidarity with Rashford and stuff. You've got to admit that that's really good to see. Shows certainly like the support that's out there now. Like I think this country is sort of united behind these lads.
It's always the same though, isn't it? Because you get all the idiots who jumped up after a result and then come out the woodwork and spouting all that horrible stuff. But then you do get the 95% of good people coming out, and the response, I think, of a good nature is always much larger and much better, obviously. But it's going to be like this until they officially change something, because nothing's changed, has it? It's been awful.
Absolutely, but it's good to see that. It looks like a few of the offenders have ended up on the dole.
Yeah.
See what happened to the Rashford mural in Manchester. That was defaced.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's brilliant to see the response that we've had to that.
They've turned that into a positive completely. I mean, within hours, people were putting up, messages, and some of the messages would, bring a tear to a glass eye type thing, and just the solidarity behind it. And then the guy who originally did it, he came back, and within hours it was restored and things like that. So it just shows, these idiots, the minority who come on social media or think they're clever or try and get clicks and likes and then deactivate and then reactivate on a different thing. It just shows that they won't win at the end of the day. It might seem as though it's stirring up again, but the fact that people are still coming back after they've done it and backing these players and giving them there's the support and things, that's just a positive all round, really, isn't it?
I think it's one of them. It's excellent to see, and that these, like you say, the response of people and like they're very much behind these players, and it's just good to see. But just going back to Jordan Pickford before we finish, what we'd like to see, like obviously now from Jordan Pickford going into next season, it's all about carrying the form that he's taken him from the end of last season, of course, to this tournament as well, to the final. Him and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you reckon he can take the experience they've had with England and maybe go on to start the season strongly with Everton?
I think in the terms of Pickford, I think he's in the best position of the two because he's had such a good tournament. Obviously, it ended the way we didn't really want it to, but his performance all through the tournament, especially keeping us in it in the penalty shootout and things like that. So I think he'll see that as a bonus. But I'm probably not the only one who's had a bit of an issue with the way Calvert-Lewin had been used.
Yeah, now, I know it's more of him.
Yeah, because I know it's a squad game, and you can only, and UEFA's rules say you have to have two keepers on the bench, and you have to leave two of your outfield players out and things like that. It's been a bit awkward, but it would have been nice to see him involved a bit more, especially with how Harry Kane had played in the beginning of the tournament, at least.
I It was just mental seeing him being left out of the squad. I know that obviously, as you mentioned on the rules there, and how he had to leave 3 players out, but I just couldn't believe going to games with Marcus Rashford on the bench because he was useless all tournament. Marcus Rashford, he was injured and he was clearly unfit, and I couldn't believe he wasn't even on the bench. I think maybe 2 or 3 of the games Calvert-Lewin was left out for, but I think maybe trying to spin that, he'll think that having those 4 weeks away with the camp, that seemed like a really good camp, really good team, really good players, good spirit. He'll want more of that, and I just like to think that the lack of game time will, if anything, give him a bit of a rest and also make him hungry for more with Everton, hopefully.
That's the thing. I think we want to try and... It's all we've heard about the England team since this tournament finished is about how strong the sort of team spirit's been within that camp, and I want to see us try and replicate something like that at Everton, where the team feels more like a family, because I feel like that's missing at the moment. I think Benitez said in his statement, his first presser this morning, that he felt like the senior players felt there's something missing, and I feel that's a bit of a team spirit as well.
It's interesting that he said that straight away, to be honest, that he's already picking up, these little things, because obviously
maybe
he's not the most the best appointment that fans could have hoped for, but the fact that he's already spotted these things that we're missing within 2 weeks has to be seen as a positive, surely, regardless of who the manager is. This is missing, I don't think any manager we've had, the last 4 or 5 managers we've had, have mentioned things like that before.
No, so, even Ancelotti, with the track record he had, never really touched on this in press conferences. And of course, he's obviously, every other manager who's come in before Benitez is a lot better placed in terms of goodwill with fans to be able to speak out like that. So I think it takes a lot of guts for him to say what he said.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to sort of endear himself early doors, and I think if he can make a bit of a team spirit and a bit of camaraderie, it's something we've needed for a long time. That's something I'd like us to build, not just for when Benitez is here, but for beyond. Obviously, if you can make that sort of team spirit and build a good squad, then I think that filters right the way down the club, and that's one of the sort of key aspects we've just been off Everton for. Yeah, you don't like to say, but probably till right back to when David Moyes was in charge. That's the sort of thing one of the many things, I think, one of the many fundamentals we've missed at Everton.
It's the fundamental. I think that's what sort of fills the club with pride, I think, and I don't think there's been enough of that. But yeah, I think that's definitely something, like I say, looking back on this performance of the tournament with England, something I'd like to see translate to the club level is create that sort of family ethos, and hopefully, obviously after taking part in that tournament, that both Jordan Pickford and Dominic Calvert-Lewin can come back with, those sort of positive vibes and translate them onto the pitch with Everton as well.
I think so. So it's all about experience at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, a lot of players Ben Godfrey, I'm sure he would have taken sitting on the bench for 7 games if you'd given him the chance, because it's just that experience of being away, experiencing the fans, the hype, the roller coaster. It just stands you. What's that old phrase? You can't really appreciate victory without experiencing defeat. And I think those highs and lows of the tournament we've had, the expectation we didn't really have, getting all the way to the final, losing it with the last kick. It's all about those experiences. And as you say, if they can bring something like that we've seen through the camp, if they can bring that back to Goodison, I think it can only be seen as a positive, really, can't it?
Well, fingers crossed they do, but we're going to finish up there anyway, guys. You guys watching at home, of course, let us know your opinions on the performances of Jordan Pickford and the relatively sporadic performances of Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. Drop us a comment below. Give this video a like and subscribe for more content. And until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in on the Toffee Blues, and we'll see you then.